Who among us remembers the sound of music? When you hear "Climb Every Mountain," do you associate the song with taking risks about freedom and a better future? Can anyone else see the breathtaking vistas, the scenic backdrop against which the Von Trapp family escaped the Nazi regime in Austria by climbing over the Alps into Switzerland, lugging suitcases, children, and of course, musical instruments? Imagine how the experience of leaving everything that could not be carried might transfigure, enlighten, inform, and transform every aspect of your perspective. Once they reached America, the family toured and sang, ultimately settling in Stowe. That's Pat McKittrick's territory, for those of you who aren't aware of the geography here. And today, the Trapp Family Lodge continues to offer a touch of Austria, nestled among Vermont's scenic mountains. I just want to interrupt this homily for a brief community service announcement. Our own Carol and Stan Johnson are resident experts on mountains, Vermont, and the Trapp Family Resort. Last week, Carol invited us into the desert. This week, our journey takes us to the mountains, into the clouds, and out to the galaxies. Does the context matter? I think it does. It does, even when it's symbolic or metaphorical. Transfiguration. It's defined as a change in form or appearance into a more beautiful or spiritual state. Let's take a moment to relook at the readings we just heard through this lens to explore how transformation manifests. In our reading from Exodus that Stan shared, Moses receives the commandments, but notice that it was not simply Moses alone who went up the mountain. It was Moses and a community of more than 70 elders. The cloud that overshadows them is symbolic of God's presence. And to the people below, the glory and energy of God looked like a consuming fire at the mountaintop. When Moses came down the mountain, he didn't realize that his skin was radiant. We're not talking about a little time in the sun, right? We're talking about radiance as a result of communing with God. So here we have a change of appearance where glory translates as fire and radiance. And then our second reading, which I have to thank Joanne Regis who read it. And I asked her to proclaim that reading because years ago, she gave me the book by Michael Morwood that it was taken from. And in that reading, From Stardust to Human, Michael Morwood invites us to imagine we were there billions of years ago when a huge star exploded in the Milky Way galaxy. The result was a massive fireball that sent trillions and trillions of tons of gas, dust, and ashes into the vastness of space. The atoms in our body They were out there as part of that gigantic cloud. For the past 4.5 billion years, every atom in each of our bodies has been on a cosmic journey from out there to here. So no, it wasn't a mountain, but we can definitely say that our journey began, and here we are now. Stardust, ash from a burning star that found a way to take on human form. Ash come to expression in flesh. We believe that an incomprehensible mystery permeates and holds everything in existence. And we are human expressions of that mystery. So what do we have in this reading? A massive fireball in space whose atoms take on human form? Are you with me in classifying that as a complete change of form or appearance? Definitely a more beautiful state. And then in today's gospel, the actual account of what we call the Transfiguration, Jesus brings 3 of his friends up the mountain, again, not alone. And there Jesus' face shone like the sun, and his clothes became dazzling white. Who else shows up? Moses and Elijah, pointing to Jesus as fulfilling the law and the prophets. Peter, ever seeking to control, it's a good thing we have nothing in common with him, right? Attempts to prolong the mystical experience. Do you ever feel like that? Like, I'm in it now, I want it to go on forever. He wants to prolong that mystical experience by putting something concrete around it before a cloud overshadows him, literally interrupting him and says, yo, Peter, this is my own, my beloved. I added the, oh, Peter, right? Listen to this Holy One. So what do we have here? Definite transformation. We have Jesus's face changing to shine like the sun and clothes being dazzling light. So to summarize, what have we learned about transformation? It can sometimes leave us stunned and overwhelmed and scared. Sometimes it precedes huge transitions, as it did in the case of Jesus. And often it occurs in the presence of community, and it takes time. Sometimes happening in response to intentional activity, like climbing a mountain to pray. We see it manifested as clarity, as radiance, as fire, as a fireball, as shining like the sun, as dazzling light. Let's acknowledge all of us face moments of revelation and periods of darkness on our journeys. And lots of times these challenges feel like they're packed together. Certainly, I don't know, certainly this year it feels like it. And sometimes it feels to us like it's supersized. Rarely, though, does a glimpse of glory present in my life like a Super Bowl halftime show with music and hydraulic lifts and smoke and pyrotechnics. I don't know about you, but feel free to share. Yet, a glimpse often leaves a perpetual imprint on our hearts and our souls. In contrast, grief and alienation and illness presents in our lives like waves that rise on a beach and knock us off balance. Again and again, we learn that betrayal and arrest and torment and even death are not the end of the story. Not for Jesus and not for us. The assurance of new life and new hope rises. The challenge for us is to concurrently hold the tension of suffering with the deep glory and joy. Because, folks, we know it. Emmanuel, God is with us in both. Take a moment now. I invite you to close your eyes and remember when you glimpsed glory. Said another way, where you were embraced by the sacred, whether you anticipated it or whether it was a surprise that hit you out of the blue. Maybe in a sunset, while walking in the face of a child, while visiting the lonely or the disoriented. In a conversation, in prayer, when you listen deeply to what was happening inside of you or another. And in that moment, you knew you were forever changed. My friends, this is good news. Each of us has the ability to see the glory of God in the midst of our daily lives, even when we're nowhere near the mountains. Desmond Tutu, the great South African Anglican bishop, suggests that we are all agents of transformation. That we are all called to transform and change our personal relationships, our communities, our world, so that all of us become models of joy and justice, freedom and peace. Tutu believed that God's glory generates a powerful change in us when we acknowledge that we truly are divine. I agree. Let it be so. Amen.